And welcome back to Divine Messy Human. This podcast has been an absolute nightmare to get out. I have had numerous issues with the software. I have had technical issues with sound, all sorts of things. So far, I'm a week late. So apologies for that. But sometimes we've just got to roll with it and not get too stressed and try our hardest to stay present and in the moment. And that leads me on to today's topic, which is about mindfulness. And it's a place that people often enter that personal development and spiritual development journey. And I guess rightly so. It's a relatively simple technique that allows us to become more present, notice our breath, be in the moment. And it's a really great tool that we can use to understand what's going on a little bit deeper within us. But it's not that easy, as simple as it is. And the reason for that is multiple, actually. I know for me, when I first started practicing mindfulness, even putting aside the time to practice was challenging because I'd never put aside time for myself before. And that becomes a big challenge in itself, but also helps us to start developing practices and to start really tapping into what's important for us. There are then other issues with mindfulness that once we overcome, it does become this beautiful practice and a wonderful way to tap into ourselves and to take those moments to recharge ourselves. But what are some of those challenges? One of the big ones for me is the nervous system regulation, because if our nervous system isn't regulated, getting into mindfulness, dropping into that space and noticing what's going on within the body can be really challenging. Part of that nervous system dysregulation comes from being energetically out of our body, not being fully present, having all of our attention on the outside world rather than what's going on under the surface. And a lot of that does have its base in trauma. And as I've said before, trauma is not just the big traumas that we think about, abuses, accidents, war zones, all of those sorts of things. It can also be, and it often also is, all of those things that are less than nourishing and nurturing, that negatively alter our view of ourselves and the way we interact with the world. So, for example, having overly critical parents or being stifled as a child can create those traumas within our body and change the way that we interact with the world and also how we view ourselves. A lot of people go into, say, for example, overwhelm and burnout because they are so busy striving to be perfect for the people around them or to do things in a right way or to be accepted by, parents, society, institutions, whatever it may be. And all of that leads us to abandon our inner self and look to the outside world for our guidance, for who we are, and for our interactions. With our nervous system, obviously it's multi-layered. And yes, we look at the things like fight, flight, and fright. There are also fragmentation, which is kind of falling to pieces, and fawning, which is where we go into people pleasing as a stress response because we're looking for belonging and connection with others, almost to prove that we exist sometimes. Now, when we are in a deep dorsal vagal nerve response, that's when we're disassociating. We're energetically leaving our body. We can shut down. We go into numbing behaviors, whether it be drink, drugs, shopping, sex, doom scrolling, any of those things, again, where we're putting our power outside of ourselves. And when we're in this state of nervous system dysregulation, we can't be fully present in the body because energetically we're trying to leave it. And so there comes this fight. And that's why a lot of people say, I can't meditate because my brain doesn't stop. And I've constantly got these thoughts and I can't sit still. And, I'm feeling really scratchy. But that is actually part of the process, is teaching yourself through those moments. When we're meditating, when we're sitting in mindfulness, when we're bringing our attention back to the present moment, because of our training, because of our conditioning, and because of our, I guess, desire to belong, we aren't always comfortable being fully present and embodied within this physical meat suit. We're often putting our attention outside ourselves. And that is actually part of the practice. So when we're sitting in those quiet moments of contemplation, meditation, whatever you want to call it, noticing the scratchiness, noticing that inability to sit still, noticing the racing thoughts, but from a place of just noticing rather than getting caught up in them and telling ourselves that we're doing it wrong and that our brain should be quiet and that our body should be still, and having all of those judgments and expectations around it. But it can be really hard to walk through that moment when we're feeling that nervous system not cooperating with what we're wanting it to do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is when our adrenal system is overloaded or on high alert, we're also sitting in that space of finding it really challenging to get into presence and be in the moment, to be in that mindful space. When we know that our adrenal system is, I guess, heightened, we can have that racing heart rate, the faster breath, the anxiety breathing where we're breathing into the top of our lungs. We can be on high alert for everything happening around us. Every single little noise can pull our attention away. We are thinking about the future. We've got that anxiety going on, or we're stuck in the past and regret and almost that depressive type state. When our adrenals are out of whack, it can be really hard to be in the present moment. It's just, these are some of the issues that we have with mindfulness when we're starting it as a practice, which makes a lot of sense. So the first thing with mindfulness, and this is why I often suggest that, yes, whilst mindfulness is a practice, we need to couple it with somatic therapies. We need to couple it with healing the trauma that is sitting in our system. We need to couple it with other practices that help us be in our body more easily and to recognize those things that are pulling us out of our body. Because most of our life, we have been trained, taught, conditioned to go outside ourselves before we go in. We're taught to defer to other people. We're taught to defer to our environment. We're taught to look around us for what's happening to us and in us. And as we start to move through and practice this more, that is when mindfulness starts to become anchored in as a way that we can recharge ourselves. So I personally find mindfulness a beautiful practice. It took me quite a while to settle into it because I did have a lot of trauma sitting in my system. I had chronic fatigue, so my adrenals were basically out to lunch all the time. I also had massive nervous system dysregulation where I found it really hard to even inhabit my body. So what are some ways that we can start with the mindfulness just to bring that attention into our body? There are two that I really loved, and these are just momentary check-ins, and you can set a reminder in your phone, whatever it is for you, because I found that for me, say, sitting in meditation for 10 minutes was impossible when I first started. Whereas putting a reminder in my phone hourly during those waking hours became something easy to do. So every hour I would get a reminder pop up, basically breathe, practice mindfulness. So I would just take a few deep breaths and imagine my energy coming back into my body and landing and being okay being there. Asking yourself, asking yourself the question, am I safe right now? Can be a really beautiful way to bring us back into the presence. That brings us out of that adrenal fight and flight response. And I love using this question. I used it for years, actually. And sometimes it would make me laugh because I could feel almost the panic and the anxiety overtaking my body. It was this driving force within me. Whereas once I was able to actually check in and go, am I safe right now in this moment? I'd look around and I'd almost laugh, going, well, duh, of course you are. Like, there's nothing threatening me. There is no saber-toothed tiger. There is no threats and abuse within my current, immediate surroundings. And I'd be like, huh. Often we go into those adrenal states because our body is telling us we're not safe. Even with the constant notifications on our phones, the lights, the movement, the noise, all of those things that are dragging our attention, our body recognizes those as threats and our body responds accordingly until we've regulated that nervous system so that it's not looking at everything around us as a threat. We have to remember that we were built as human beings to move at walking pace. And we hurtle through the world in our cars at 40, 60, 80, 100 kilometers an hour. We are constantly on the go. We have multiple notifications coming in on our phones. We have noise in the background. We have traffic. We have all of this stuff overloading our senses. And in What the Bleep, they say that we bring in something like 400 billion bits of information every second that we're alive. Yet we can only process about 2,000 bits of that. And that's if we're not in a stressed state. So from this 400 billion bits, we're bringing in 2,000 bits if we're unstressed. And when we're stressed, sometimes it's as low as 500 bits. Now, mindfulness is kind of giving us a little bit more space to notice more of the things going on around us. But we can't do that if our attention is focused fully on all of those things. We need to be able to do it from a place of being in our body. And that's why I like that. Well, am I safe right now? It really brings us back to that physical moment. And where am I in this space? Where am I actually situated? And is there any danger in this immediate proximity? When we're in an adrenal response, we are looking at all of those things going on around us as threats. So we as human beings are both predator animals and prey animals. We are both the killer and the killed. So if you think about that, we act as the prey animal. Let's call it a zebra. And that zebra is obviously, if there's a pack of lions around it, it is going to be on high alert. And it is going to be noticing where all of those things are. They are all threats. Where's my escape route? It will constantly be processing, how do I get out of this? Is it safe? Is it not safe? Am I okay? Now, we are that zebra. And often what can be those perceived lions are things like our to-do list. They are things like what we've got to get done. They are people in our lives. They are situations in our lives. It is business or work commitments. It is other commitments that we have. But instead of being relaxed with it and knowing that it's all under control and we're going to get to it eventually, and priorities will make it to the top of the list at some point or another, and being in a comfortable, present space with it, we're standing there as the zebra, as though there is a pack of lions surrounding us and about to attack. So everything then that gets added to that to-do list becomes another threat, rather than, it's just another thing and it'll get done when I'm ready and able to get it done. But we also have the ability to move into that lion space. And when we think about lions hunting, they will sit back and they will watch the herd. And they will work out which is that animal that looks like the best chance of a kill to feed them and the pride. So what happens is those lionesses work together, because it is usually the lionesses that do the kills. Those lionesses work together as a team, and then they go, that animal there, and they choose one. And then they go after it with a single vision. And this is the other thing. Often we are trying to multitask. We're trying to do so many things at once that we are trying to do 3, 4, 5, 10 things on our to-do list. The lioness focuses in on one thing. And she doesn't get halfway through a chase and then go, oh, but what about this one? Or, oh, but what about that one? Or maybe we should go for this one. She focuses in on that animal. And if that animal gets away, then they give up and they go back. They go to a different herd. They, wait till the next day and then they start again. This is the way that we also have the ability to, operate in this world. We can choose that one thing, that one task. And in a way, that in itself is a mindfulness practice. What am I focusing on right now in this moment? I have lost almost a week trying to focus on getting this podcast out because of the different technical issues and all of that. And then I'll distract myself with 100 other things, knowing that I'm not actually focusing on that animal. I'm allowing myself in those moments to be the zebra. And it didn't help me get my podcast out any earlier, did it? Clearly, because I'm a week late. So mindfulness is also being aware of, okay, well, I'm focusing on these 100 things. What's one thing that I could do that I could get done that will start the ball rolling for me then to attack the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. But when we're in a state of not being present, not being in our body, not being fully embodied, we do get distracted by all the different things around us. So with mindfulness being a practice, these are the things we want to practice. We want to practice being in our body. Am I safe right now? Another one I used to use are, where are my feet? And that I loved because my feet connect me to the ground. So it's a really good way to energetically come back into my body, because if my energetic body is out and around me, it comes back into my body. Oh yeah, there are my feet. I've had clients who haven't been able to feel their feet. They've not been able to feel anything beneath their knees or beneath their hips, and pulling that energy system back into the body can feel really challenging if our body hasn't felt like a safe place to be, especially for those victims of abuse or long-term traumas that have been compounded over time. Being actually present in the physical body can be a real scary place to be. And that's why I like those two practices. Am I safe right now? Well, yeah, I'm not being chased by a lion. Okay, I've got a big to-do list, but it's not threatening me. It's there. And when I get into that focus period, I can then focus on one thing at a time. And then that other one of, where are my feet? And what I use with the where are my feet are, like I say, because they connect us to the ground, because if we're lucky, they are always with us. And we can then start to bring our awareness to different aspects. Can I feel the air on my feet? Can I feel where my socks are touching my feet? Can I feel my toes touching together? And so we're able then to use a mindfulness practice to drill into that question of, where are my feet? Sometimes I used to have to spend 5 minutes in, where are my feet, just to be able to feel them on the ground. But those two questions can really bring us back to being more and more comfortable in our body. So yes, mindfulness is a really important practice. It is a beautiful part of our spiritual and self-development journey. It is a really great way to learn how to become more present and to be in that moment. It's a great way to be able to concentrate on our breath and have that anchor to bring us back when we are in the future, in the past, the zebra surrounded by the lions, looking out for danger. But those two are a really good starting place. Doing the somatic therapies to help you disconnect from and to harmonize those things that stop you from being in the moment, from being present, is a really useful thing. And this is why I have used so many modalities in my healing journey. Obviously, kinesiology was a massive, massive one for me, but I also went to psychologists, chiropractors, acupuncturists, mediums, psychics, massage therapists, hypnotherapists, you name it, I've pretty much tried it. And the reason is then I'm able to shift some of those stresses out of my body that cause the dysregulation of my nervous system, that cause the adrenal issues. And therefore, by regulating my nervous system more, nurturing and nourishing my adrenals more, I've been able to become more present in my body, become more present in the moment that is happening, and to live from that place a lot more regularly. So, yes, mindfulness, very, very important. Absolutely incredible place to be and practice to have in your toolkit. But if you're struggling with it, know that you're not alone. It can be really challenging, and often for those reasons that I've suggested. Understanding the body is my first pillar of self-mastery, because as we get to understand those physical symptoms of not being present and of what is going on in the physical body, it then leads us into other aspects of healing within ourselves and other aspects of them being able to access the present moment, be in the present moment more, and be distracted less. So let me know how this resonated for you. Have you struggled with mindfulness, with meditation, with being in the present moment? Do you recognize some of those symptoms of the nervous system dysregulation or the adrenals being out of whack? Let me know in the comments, and I would love to hear from you. If there's anything you want me to talk about, please send me a message. I would love to chat about anything that you want me to chat about. Remember, we are all connected to the divine. We are all messily human. And the more we can love and accept our divinity and accept our messiness, the easier our human existence becomes.